Hey there, entrepreneurs, and welcome to today's show. This is one that I'm using to kick off the giving season, although I do tend to think the giving season should be year-round, folks. And I am joined by the lovely Cynthia Kersey, who is the founder and CEO of the Unstoppable Foundation, which focuses, their focus is to ensure that every child, folks, on the planet has access to the lifelong gift of education. She's a respected leader in the transformational industry, a best-selling author of 2 books, Unstoppable and Unstoppable Women, an international speaker, a beautiful human being on this planet. And, one of the things that I know that we're going to be speaking about, is what Cynthia knows firsthand, is that giving is not only good for business, but it's good for your soul. So Cynthia, welcome to today's show.
Oh my gosh. Thank you so much, Michelle. So great to be with you.
Yeah, this is just such a needed conversation. But before we jump in, because I know we're going to speak about kind of the benefits of giving and, how that just makes you a better person, quite frankly. But please tell us, a little bit about your start on your journey to giving, how it transformed you. I know you had a conversation with Millard Fuller in there. So just give us kind of the backstory.
Yeah. Well, yeah. So, I was, going through my career, the idea wasn't to find a purpose, right? It was really more, how do I do something I love? How do I take care of my family? And it wasn't around integrating giving in my business. And I was in, corporate America, started as an entry-level telemarketer, made it to a national account manager, making a 6-figure income. And I'm not inspired by what I'm doing. So I decided that I literally would quit my job, cash in my entire life savings, to be able to write a book called Unstoppable. That was kind of the beginning. And, and what was my purpose? My purpose was to inspire people to live unstoppable lives. And so put everything on the line, because I'd always been inspired. I'm sure you are too. You interview people all the time who have, a path that's calling them, and it seems impossible, or they experience all sorts of challenges, but they hang in there. And so I decided, I got so much inspiration, I wanted to share that with other people. So my book comes out, I'm finally living my purpose. And 18 months after the book came out, my 20-year marriage ended. And one of the people that I had interviewed for the book was Millard Fuller, the founder of Habitat for Humanity. And I talked to him, and he said, when you have a great pain in your life, you need a greater purpose. And I thought, what are you talking about? I'm already, I left a corporate job, what more of a purpose do I need?
Exactly.
But as I really sat with it, Michelle, I realized the purpose of even inspiring people to live unstoppable lives was not bigger than the pain that I was experiencing. Mm-hmm. And he said, why don't you build a house for a family in need? And he had just gotten back from Nepal and told me how, stunningly beautiful the country is and the people are. And yet it's one of the most impoverished nations in the world. Yeah. And, he said, why don't you build a house there? And I'm thinking, how many houses would I need to build that offsets this pain in my life? Yeah. Now, understand, I'd never built one house. I'd never raised money before, but as I sat with it, I thought, well, I don't know, five times more than I've ever done.
Exactly.
And it just didn't even move the needle in my heart, and I went to 10 and then 20 and then 50. And literally it wasn't until I hit 100 houses that felt bigger than my pain. Wow. So that year while I'm speaking, it's crazy, huh?
That's a lot of houses.
And,
that's a lot of houses. Yeah.
Huh?
That's a lot of houses. Yeah.
It's a lot of houses. The thing is, they're only $2,000 a house. So it was like $200,000, but it might as well have been $2 million. I'd never raised any money before. But all I did was, when I was out there speaking, and literally so many times, would be crying, and my eyes would be all puffy, and, just going through my own healing through that process. And I would think about the families that didn't even have a roof over their head.
Yeah.
And it really provided that reality check for me. I was doing fine. I had a house, I was living in a house, my basic needs were taken care of.
Right.
So I, just decided that anyway. So, as I'm out there talking, I ended up raising the money. And then 18 months later, I took 18 people with me to Nepal, and we worked on the first 3 of the 100 homes that were built that year.
Wow.
And this is the key thing, because, and I'm sure you may have experienced this before, or certainly people that are listening to us, when we give, sometimes we think, oh my gosh, we're just doing something wonderful for this person, right? Or these people or community or whatever, which I was. But what I didn't anticipate was how it would change my life. I mean, I'm still talking about it. I went there in 1990. Well, I guess it was the year 2000, and it's 21 years ago.
Yeah.
And it is still a pivotal moment for me. And my life changed as a result of that experience. And that's when I started integrating giving in my life and in my business.
Wow. Wow. I mean, that's so remarkable that you said that. And I think it is surprising to folks sometimes, I mean, myself included, like what you just described, you go in and you're like, okay, I love how you do like the formula. How many houses equates themselves to my pain,
right.
like a true, like go-getter, right? With that, you're like, let me just check off the box.
Seriously.
But you're right. It's like, you don't realize like the transformation that goes on inside of you when you're giving, because we are all kind of part of one big ecosystem. Right. And earlier today, I was watching, there's a promo video you guys did for the foundation where the little boy drops a bottle with a message in it in the water to like go spread the news and to like help the cause. And I was crying. I'm like, because we are all interconnected. So I think that's just such a beautiful, beautiful story. So just to transition keep going. Go ahead.
Oh, go ahead.
No.
I was just going to say, and so often, going through a pandemic or anything really challenging, I've talked to a lot of people where they've looked, without, how can we give? How can I give? Instead of focusing on my needs and what can I do for myself? And what can you do for me? Even worse, right?
Yes.
It's not very attractive coming from that place. But when you're really looking at how can I be of service, it gives your life meaning. It gives your life purpose. Yeah. And such an important time in the world where giving, I mean, it really is, I can think of nothing that can invigorate your life, your business, your career, more than finding something that's bigger than you to get behind.
Yeah. I couldn't have said that better myself, just because like you said, like there's so many times, especially in a business sense, when you come into like, I feel like at this point I can kind of spot it a mile away when there's somebody coming at you who just wants kind of that tit for tat or very transactional or very kind of like what's in it for me mentality. And I'm not saying like, don't have your interest at heart. That's not what I'm saying either. Because as women, I feel like, especially like we need to be unstoppable in that way. However, there's a difference and there's a law of the universe that I believe in very strongly, of what you put out comes back at you. But talk to us about, because sometimes when you're in that low place, it seems counterintuitive to go give, you're like, come on, haven't I given enough? Like you're in that victim mentality almost.
Yeah. Well, I'll give you a good story that really kind of demonstrates what I'm talking about. So a woman many years ago, her name is Cammie Walker, and she was at the height of her career. She had just gotten married. She came back from her honeymoon, and she woke up one morning and she couldn't move her left hand. And she ended up going to the doctors, and over a period of tests, she was diagnosed as having multiple sclerosis. And it was a very quick onset, and in a very short period of time, like she's in and out of the hospital, she's in pain. And it was like her hope, for this amazing future with her husband and her business was just like deteriorating. And she's in the hospital, and a friend and really kind of a spiritual advisor to her came and met with her. And, Cammie's in the hospital, she's all depressed. And the woman's name is Mabali. And she said, Cammie, I understand the situation you're in right now, but you've got to stop thinking about yourself all the time, because it's just magnifying. Right.
Yeah.
And Cami was outraged. I mean, imagine, you're in the hospital, you're feeling horrible, and this woman is telling you to get your mind off of yourself.
You're like, get over it. That's like saying get over it.
I mean, yeah, get over it. Come on. Exactly. And so, but she listened, resentfully. And Abali said, listen, I want you to do something special. I want you to give away 29 gifts in 29 days. So one gift a day. And she's like, what are you talking about? I'm in the hospital. What can I give? And she said, it doesn't matter. You can give a kind word, a smile, a prayer, a blessing. But the key thing is that you give from a place of abundance, right? So you're not like holding back. You're giving, as unto God. I mean, there's different ways that you could say it,
right?
But with no attachment to how they'll respond. And so she thought, well, it can't make it worse, my situation.
True.
So every day, somebody came into her room. Oh, I know. The first thing that she did is she called a friend who also had multiple sclerosis, and her friend's husband was traveling. So she thought, okay, I'll just connect with her and see how she's doing. And after that conversation, she felt better. So she thought, so every day she's doing something. Literally halfway into this 29 days, she's noticing like she's starting to be able to not only feel better, but take steps without her cane.
Wow.
And by the time she was done, she and her husband did this, 1 mile walk, which before she couldn't walk, 400 feet. And, did she still have multiple sclerosis? Yes. It wasn't like it healed her from every ailment. But what it did is it gave her a purpose, and it helped her realize that she had things she could give, and her life wasn't over. Maybe it looked different than what she had anticipated, but she still had the ability to contribute and to live a meaningful life. And I think that is a really powerful story, because I don't care where you are, what you've gone through. Your story can be a blessing to someone else if you're willing just to listen, or to, like easy ways. Maybe you're in a grocery store and you let somebody in front of you, or you pay for somebody's Starbucks. Yeah. I mean, who knows, right? It's kind of like, where are you feeling inspired to do something?
Exactly. Yeah. And it's not a sense of obligation, right? Because I can hear,
that's right.
I can hear some of my friends in their heads, like, especially right now in the pandemic, where, women in particular are giving out of maybe potentially a sense of obligation. We're burnt. But again, the other kind, like you're describing, really does reinvigorate you. I go through the Dunkin' Donuts drive-through and pay for the person behind me multiple times a week, especially if I'm having a bad week. That's like my go-to automatic, easy thing to do. Right. And I do feel better.
Exactly. That is an important point, Michelle, that you brought up, is not giving from obligation. And we all do that. There are certainly things and times where you do give out of obligation, but what I'm talking about is giving out of inspiration. And that's the part that you're invigorated, even like you said, several times a week, paying for somebody's Starbucks or whatever. Doesn't that, I'm sure it makes their day, but it really makes your day even more. It's like, wow, isn't it? It's just so fantastic to be able to do that.
Yeah. I went through a drive-through,
looking like, where do you feel inspired? I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, no, that's okay. I went through a drive-through one day. I think it was at McDonald's or something like that with the kids. And we paid for the person behind us, and the person behind the register said, okay, you're number 68 or something crazy like that. And I was like, what are you talking about? And he's like, somebody started that. He's like, and because somebody had paid for us. So I paid for the person behind us. And he's like, and it's number 68. And then I watched the local Facebook groups, and somebody said, yeah, it got all the way up to like over 100. Until somebody just didn't have the change, somebody literally didn't have the money, so to pay for the people behind us, but I can imagine
so cool,
the ripple effect on paying that forward.
Yeah.
Yikes. That's crazy. That's beautiful. So what
are
you
the other thing I wanted to mention?
Yeah, of course.
I do want to say one quick thing about what you said about, if I'm giving to you, wanting something back. It's really trading.
Yes.
That's a very
Yes,
important
it is.
distinction.
That is a very important distinction.
It's a very important, and there's nothing wrong with that, but it's a lower level, right? If I'm going to give to you, like I'm going to mail to your list, or I'm going to do something and you're expecting me to do something, it's not giving. The highest level of giving, the transformational impact of giving, is when I'm giving and expecting nothing in return, knowing that as I give, it will always come back to me in different ways. I just don't know.
Yeah.
So that's, I think, a very important distinction. And a lot of people give kind of like what you said, the tit for tat. And that's, again, it's not the highest level of inspired giving that we're talking about right now.
Right. And I like the term that you're using, inspired giving, right? Because I think if we can be realistic and kind of take the shame or whatever it is off of the other categories, and then name the other one accordingly as well, then, at least you know what you're dealing with, because I imagine that there is quite a bit of resentment in this world built from exactly what you just said. Like, I think I'm giving from a place of inspired giving, but really I'm hoping you hit me back with something later. Right. And that's
right.
That's where resentment builds.
Yes, it does. Yeah. There's when you give, like, oh, you're helping your children, or you're helping a niece, or you're helping a family member, and you've got some kind of an obligation around it, it's not a gift, it's a trade. No. And Bob Proctor, who's a dear friend and mentor, he's always said, when I give money, they could take the money and bury it in a hole in the backyard. Right.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter, because he's giving because he's inspired to give.
Right.
And I think that's a beautiful metaphor for giving. It's like, don't be attached. I mean, I've given money to people, they said they needed a car, and, like, great. Oh my God, that inspired me so much to be a part of being able to help somebody get a car.
Yeah.
Now, did they always go buy the car afterwards? I think I've done that twice. I don't know that they did. And you know what? It doesn't matter.
No, and it's interesting about it. It's interesting because I'm thinking of my fundraising training in grad school, and, finding out the motivation for the people, and and there are situations where ego does come in, and you do have donors who need the building named, who need the thing, and that's like a different thing too. But I think, again, it even speaks to the deeper motivation. You can have the building, fine, sure. But I don't necessarily view that, and I'd love your 2 cents on this. I don't necessarily view that in kind of the tit for tat area of things either. I'm not really sure. That's a weird situation then, the legacy part of it.
Yeah. Hey, I'm happy to give people what they want. So, I mean,
exactly. You want a building? Here's a building.
Yeah, exactly. I'll put your name on and I honestly, Michelle, I think there's levels. So people, as they grow in their own consciousness and their own giving, if a building is important to them, I don't judge it, so, exactly. And then there's some people that, there's nothing you could give them. They don't care. So we'll take it all, right? Exactly. I mean, everybody's on their journey. So being a fundraiser, I'm grateful wherever they are on the giving path.
I'm just cracking up thinking about all the different situations in the past that I've been in, that I'm like, I'll do whatever. Is it $1 million? Cool. You know what we could do for $1 million? So many people we would help, and so much things we would impact, and the ripple effect of that good. Whew, yeah. That's the type of thing that gives me chills with that. But so from a business perspective as well, I mean, all of these benefits aren't just on the personal side, right? If you're doing business, talk to us a little bit about how giving, makes you a better business person as well.
Yeah. Well, even going back to Sir John Templeton, he was called one of the greatest stock advisors of the 20th century. Yeah. And people were constantly, he was a billionaire. And people were constantly saying, well, what is your secret? How can I be like you are and amass a lot of wealth? And do you know, he had one word of his secret, and it was tithing. So tithing is even different than giving, right? Because it's a regular way of giving. And what he said was, I've never known anyone who tithed at least 10% of their earnings, that they didn't have it coming back tenfold. And he said, just reaching out and helping somebody else brings that energy to you. So just starting on a business level, personal level, I know so many organizations that I've worked with is they started tithing. So, a great example is Proctor Gallagher Institute. So Bob Proctor's organization, the very first check that they write every single week is to the Unstoppable Foundation.
Wow.
And when they made a commitment to donate each kind of year, they went up very significantly. And Sandy, at one of our events back in 2017, she stood up on stage and made this big commitment, and it was a big gulp. And, she wasn't really sure how she was going to do it. And literally within a couple of weeks, she ended up getting 2 new clients that was like double the commitment that she made. And what they said was, and this is what Bob said, he said, as he gives, he kind of like attributes his giving journey to me because I've asked him and it stretched him. Yeah. And, but he said it's made them a better company. It's made them, more inspired human beings. So and look who he is and the good that he does.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
Yeah. But, it's powerful, and people, there's so many, oh my gosh, there's so many, using your business as a social purpose, like attaching some sort of a cause. They had a study, there's many, many studies that have been done, but basically in price are equal. People will choose to purchase a product or service that is around a cause. Yeah. So if you can align what you're doing, with the cause, you'll magnetize your people to be a part of your tribe.
Yeah. And and at no cost to you, really. When I look at those different business models, I'm like, okay, what is it costing you? Maybe the price of giving a sticker or a tote bag or whatever kind of the swag is that goes with the match or something. It's such a little bit of an investment that just has a massive impact. And I do think like the generations below me, like that is a thing that they are all looking for, like from buying stock to, the purchases that they make on the day to day, like they want the social cause behind it, which, gives me a little bit of extra hope, I think, in regards to that.
No kidding. I hear you. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I know you kind of have these 6 benefits of giving. I know we've touched on some of them, but I really want to kind of, just drive them all home. So, number 1 you have is giving activates receiving, like we said. So just hit on that a little bit more for us.
Yeah. So I love that too, because the scriptures, just getting down to the basics, it says give and it shall be given unto you. Right. It's not wait until you receive or have more time or more money or your kids are in school or out of school. Giving activates receiving. And if we hold on, to something for dear life, even if you're a billionaire and you're not, if you're just afraid you're going to lose it, you're not really a prosperous person, right? It's like, oh my gosh, if you're afraid of losing it. So I think the key thing, it's like, no matter what you want, is it more love? Is it more connection? Is it better friendships? You be the one, to activate the giving. And again, not as a trade. That's a really important piece, right? So when you're giving, let's say that I reach out to you and, give you more time or whatever, and you're not really kind of giving it back to me. That's not a problem.
Right.
That's okay. Because it's going to come somewhere else, whether it's a customer or, whatever. So if you come from a place of giving, it will come back. Right. It's just, it will clothe itself into something different.
Right. And knowing at which level that you can give, like you just said, like if you are pulling your hair out, stressed out to the nines, you should give, but maybe it doesn't mean you're tacking 20 hours worth of volunteer work on top of your pile.
That's right.
So really kind of qualifying that or quantifying it, depending on how you want to look at it, but as to accommodating you and knowing that it doesn't have to be, because sometimes I feel people think if they can't give big, they can't give. Right.
Yes. And that's so not true.
Right. Exactly. Right. Look at how many crowdsourcing campaigns and all the different campaigns out there that are, average $25 a head, in giving that raise. And I think
I want to say something about that. Yeah, go ahead.
No. You go,
Well,
girl.
I think
Go.
people want to be, yeah, people want to be people. What is a philanthropist? It's a lover of humanity.
Right.
And, when you look at all of the great social challenges that have happened, been solved throughout history, even with polio, and remember the March of Dimes,
Yeah.
literally it was eradicated through this campaign where people gave nickels and pennies and quarters. And the key thing is when the collective comes together, it's not like just the billionaires that can solve the problem. It's the collective that comes together. We really can solve any, like mine is education for every child. Every child could be in school if we all came together and said, I want to do a little bit.
Right. So how do you,
so it's important.
In response to that, I've actually heard people say like, I'm overwhelmed by the causes. I'm overwhelmed. So then I give nothing because I'm so paralyzed by the world today or what I see on social media or any of that stuff. So how do you kind of respond to people with that question?
Yeah. Well, that's a good question. So some people get into analysis paralysis.
Yeah.
So we got to kind of get into this, right? So are they using as are they truly overwhelmed, or they go, okay, where's my money going? And they do all this research, and then you're looking into this, and then you get overwhelmed and you don't do anything. And so what I recommend is you do something and realize that as you're giving unto God, you're giving, to the universe, you're giving, call it whatever you want. And like with Bob's strategy, it's like if you try to control every little thing that you give and what that outcome is going to be, you're going to be disappointed.
Yeah.
So I just recommend, do what you can with where you are in that moment. Like Cammie, she could pray, she could, set or have a smile. She gave a little bit of money. It's like, what can you do that you feel inspired by in the moment? And as you do that, you'll start to create some momentum. Because to not give because you're overwhelmed, you're in a cycle that you can't get out of.
Yeah. And I think, to be blunt, that's about you. Exactly. I mean, that's what ends up happening, right? Which is not kind of that feeling. And like you said, it makes you feel great when you do give. So, and it's good for your pocketbook is one of the things you had too, like you said. So 1, tax write-off. 2, from just the universal of the money coming back, right? So both ends of the spectrum for that, right?
That is exactly it. Kind of like the tithing that we talked about. I mean, there's so many. I mean, there, another one is with the USANA. They're a network marketing organization. They were founded by Dr. Wentz many years ago. His vision was to eradicate poverty and illness and sickness, through his nutraceuticals. And he got like so many people, thousands and thousands of distributors rallied around this mission. And maybe 10 years into it, he started noticing, there was kind of they weren't growing. And they hired Peggy Pelosi, who went in and really looked at what was going on. And they found that the company lost their soul, right? They started focusing on the business more and not really what they were doing, what they were making a difference in the purpose that Dr. Wentz had. So she literally found an organization, the Children's Hunger Fund, that she did a partnership with USANA and their nutraceuticals. And as they started giving this product or money to this orphanage in I don't recall where it was, somewhere in a developing country where the children are, high mortality rate. As they saw the stories come back in, it invigorated. Not only did it invigorate the company, but their stocks rose like 3,000%. They became like one of the number one people to work for in Utah. And it was like they found their soul again. So that really demonstrated a real financial growth in their company when they aligned with the cause that people were inspired by.
Yeah. And I think, I love the fact that you say it feels like they lost their soul, right? Because I think there's a lot of companies grappling with that right now, quite frankly, with the people and the human aspect and the connection to their employees and whatnot. And I think as humans, we do get kind of mired down in the craziness and in our worlds, but to be able to step into a workplace where that's the norm, where giving is a norm, where connecting with fellow humans is the norm, and appreciating everybody, that is such a powerful thing financially, I would think. Yeah. It's incredible.
It is. Part of our team is we have these values that we talk about on every team call. And one of them is to leave people with an impression of increase, feeling uplifted and heard. That's another way of giving, right? To each other. We want you to feel better about yourself as a result of our interaction. So again, it's like giving is such a wide scale of things that you can do that really make a difference.
Yeah. I mean, I want to drill down a little bit on the herd aspect of that, right? Because I think people don't necessarily look at that, because I think oftentimes, especially if you're talking networking or business, like you're thinking about your next thought, right? Instead of just genuinely hearing someone and understanding where they're at. The quote is escaping me: seen, soothed, and heard. Is that Mr. Rogers quote that talks about that? But I think it goes for us adults too, because it was geared towards children. But, so how do you think people can go about just having people feel heard around them?
Yes, such a great question. And how many times are you with someone who is really listening? They're really listening, and it's very healing. I remember this one woman that I knew maybe 10 years ago. And when I was in her presence, it was actually a little uncomfortable. I always kind of feel a little uncomfortable if I'm just talking about myself. I'll immediately start asking questions. But it was like she kept, nope, I want to know this, and just deeply heard me. And it was like, when you feel heard, and that is a gift.
Yes.
When you can give that to somebody else, it is exceedingly powerful. And the way you do it is you stop talking and you really hear them, and asking questions and giving them a moment to feel, as opposed to going into your next question or talking about what you want to. I think it's one of the greatest gifts you can give somebody.
I agree. And I mean, I just imagine a world in which that was a thing, like all over the place. And I am going to hold as much space for it to continue to be a thing, but also, on the side of understanding when you're holding space for someone to be heard. Oftentimes I speak a lot about how just saying, "Oh, how are you?" is like the new hi, right? Instead of just saying, "I hope you're well," which if you can't necessarily hold the space to listen, it's okay, right? Because we all have our stuff, but know that about yourself at that moment, and bless and release in some other way, but really being able to kind of be honest with yourself about what space you can hold, and holding it where you can, right?
Yeah, right. Because you're right. You don't always have an opportunity. And just being authentic about that. I like that. Just saying, I hope you're well. Great to see you. Because
I think also we've always, most of us have been on the end of things when somebody asks, "How are you?" And then you tell them, and you can see the awkwardness between you two. And you're like, "Oh, you didn't really want to know." But there is such value.
Exactly.
Yeah, but there's such value in
it really is.
Just genuinely listening, right?
No, I was just thinking, for me, if somebody says, "How are you?" I don't really go into much detail until I know they really, really want to know. And then I'll go into a little more. Yeah. Because it's just like, why really go into something if you feel like people don't really care? I'm not going to waste my time. I don't need to just hear myself talk.
No.
So, yeah.
No. And I think it's learning that and learning and valuing those few people, because I'm the type of person I would much rather quality in my circle than quantity. Because of exactly that. I'm not good at non-deep conversations.
Right.
Surface level. This is why I do this. So, but anyway.
This is why, exactly. You totally found your calling, Michelle. It's amazing.
Yeah, and because you get to learn so much about somebody too. And again, it is your giving is activating the receiving on a lot of levels, which is a beautiful, beautiful thing.
Well, and how uninspiring is it to be with somebody where they're talking the whole time and they're not even asking you questions, and it's not this exchange? It's very unsatisfying.
Yeah. And just, not nice on some levels, depending on, what the dynamic is. And I think, it shows kind of a lack of curiosity, and sometimes people can't help it, right? Because they're in that place, right? And we've all been in that place when we're all consumed, which, when you're in that kind of neighborhood, the giving needs to start, right? Another catalyst for
That's
giving.
right. That's a place you can start. Easy.
Right.
Easy.
Right. Easy peasy. So, anything else that you kind of want to impart to our audience around, what you've learned about giving, what you've seen, anything like that in your travels?
I just think for me, because I've never been motivated by money, it's always been, what does that money make possible?
Exactly.
So I think as you're really looking at your business, and if you want to integrate, you're like, okay, I love the idea of integrating a purpose, a cause in my business. And then just looking for, what is that? And how can you start, simply? I've done some crazy things. So when my second book came out, and I wanted to continue to find another, way that I could give, and was invited to this rural African women conference. And literally the only thing I knew about this conference was that people were coming together from rural Kenya. Women were coming to share their stories. That's all I knew. Wow. And I felt like I should go there. And so I knew one person who was going. I literally, within a couple of weeks, had booked my flight, flew over there, and met with 40 women from North America. We get on this bus, like this big old kind of, no shock absorbers bus.
Yeah.
And we're driving, 15 hours, and I'm getting like cranky, and I'm hot, and I'm thinking, God, help me get over my little self, so that I don't miss why I'm here.
Right.
And I got to this place, we pulled down the road, and there's all these women waiting. And we got off the bus, and we started singing and kind of dancing. And I felt like I was in heaven. And for 5 days, I sat with these women. I heard their stories. And I started with, oh my God, feeling just overwhelming compassion, to then starting to feel pissed off. That, like, how is this okay?
Yeah.
That, just by virtue of where you're born, this is your situation. Your children are dying of malaria. For the price of a cup of coffee, they could have been treated. And all of this stuff. So literally, as I'm leaving, we all kind of cried and held each other, and they're like, please don't forget us. And I'm thinking, who am I? Like, what can I do? This problem has been going on for centuries, the challenges in East Africa and developing countries, but I promised them I would do something. And it started with my birthday, when I turned 50 years old. I thought, I will turn this into a fundraiser. Liz Edlick, I know that you're from Radical Skincare. You interviewed her. She's been such a dear friend. She was there. Bob Proctor was there. Marcy Shimoff was there. Mary Morrissey. And so I turned my birthday into a fundraiser. And that, again, was this profound experience. People were coming up to me and thanking me for the opportunity to give. We raised $80,000. It helped build 2 schools in East Africa. And again, I thought, oh my God, if I could just do this in one night, what could I do if I actually put my mind and heart into it? Yeah. And that was really the beginning of starting the Unstoppable Foundation. And I did it on the side for the first couple of years. And then it's like, I can't do my business anymore.
Yeah.
And literally when I made the decision that I was all in, it was like people came to support, to be a part of it. And now, we've, impacted over 500,000 people. We have these incredible supporters, and are working with families, who are barely surviving to actually thriving, having healthcare, access to clean water, education, the opportunity to go to college, the opportunity to become leaders, leadership training and things like that. But the key thing is I never felt capable of doing anything. That was never my big vision.
Right.
All I was doing was responding to that tug of my heart.
Yeah.
And then things unfolded. So I think that's what I would encourage people. It's like, notice where you feel drawn. Notice where you see injustice. It's like people have come to me before and they're like, well, why are you doing things in Africa? You look at all the challenges in our backyard. I'm like, if that's where you feel inspired, you should do it.
Exactly.
Don't point your finger at me. I'm doing what I feel called to do.
Right.
So, you know what I'm saying? It's just look and do something little. Like I had a birthday party. It wasn't a big thing, but it really shifted the trajectory of my life.
Yeah. Yeah. And like you said, it's the power of giving and receiving, right? It's twofold there. And, for those of you listening, if you can just put yourselves in the shoes of those women who said, just don't forget about us. Can you even imagine, for those of us living in the US, UK, Europe, and a lot of the listeners, saying that, and then holding your child's hand and watching people walk away and hoping they come back. I can't even, it makes me want to cry while I'm sitting here just for that. But you just raised so many good points. It doesn't have to be this massive thing, but it does have to be a give.
Mm-hmm.
And that's it, right?
That's right. That's it.
Beautiful. Beautiful. Can you tell people?
There's so many opportunities. Yeah. Go ahead.
No, I just want to make sure people know where they can find you, quite frankly, because they need to give. If they're looking to give, we're right at Giving Tuesday, folks. Let's go.
Yeah. And we have the thing too, is you can champion a child. That's kind of like our real focus is that, for $31 a month, you're really championing a child with the things we talked about: education, clean water, healthcare, like all the things that we take for granted for our own children. So anyway, you can go to unstoppablefoundation.org, learn more about what we do. If you feel inspired, you can reach out, you can make a donation, you can see how you could get more involved. And if not us, find something that inspires you. If this is, Giving Tuesdays coming up, find a way that you can give and just notice how enriched your life is when you take the time or you invest money or whatever you're investing in the life of another person and what that does for you. I
love it. Well, Cynthia, you've made my day. I'm not gonna lie there. You've definitely given here, my friend. So, thank you so much. And folks, again, go to the show notes, Google Cynthia, you're going to find her, and she's got some amazing things that you will find. And Cynthia, thank you so much for being here with me today.
Oh gosh, it's my pleasure. Just appreciate you and everything you're doing to inspire other people to live their best life. So nice to meet you, and just continued success.
Thank you very much.